Welcome back to Letters of Intent. I am Pankaj Raval, your host. Our co-host Sahil Chaudhry is on vacation. And today we have a special guest, Dennis Meador, who is a savant when it comes to legal marketing. And if you're an attorney, if you're in the legal space, you're going to definitely want to take notes on this episode because you're going to get a lot of really great insights. So Dennis is the founder of the Legal Podcast Network, where he delivers turnkey podcasting solutions tailored for attorneys and other legal professionals across the United States. With over 2 decades of experience in legal marketing, Dennis is driven by a clear mission to help attorneys build authority, grow their practices, and connect meaningfully with audiences through the power of podcasting. And we're going to talk a lot about why podcasting is important in this day and age. As a lifelong entrepreneur, Dennis launched his first business at 14 and has since scaled multiple companies from under $1 million to multi-million-dollar revenues in record time. His marketing acumen and instinct for growth are matched by a deep passion for storytelling and content creation. In 2019, Dennis hosted a successful podcast spotlighting food, music, and culture in Austin, Texas, which I definitely want to hear more about, an experience that deepened his appreciation for authentic audio content inspired by his current venture. Today, he leverages his background in business development and media to make a professional-grade podcasting accessible and effective for legal experts nationwide. Dennis, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for putting together that mouthful of stuff that just says, hey, there's a marketer on the show.
Yes, you can do marketing in so many different ways, and I feel like you really encapsulated very well what it is you do. So it's wonderful to have you here. Here at Carbon Law Group, we talk about how to grow and scale businesses, and marketing is a big part of it. How do you grow and scale? It's oftentimes through marketing, sales, and there's different elements to it. And we've had other brand people on the podcast in the past. So I'd love to kind of learn a little bit more about what got you into this space. Obviously, there's a lot of podcasts today, but podcasting has not been around for that long. So what drew you to the space, and what made you focus also on working with lawyers?
So drawn to the podcasting space specifically, I did that podcast back in Austin, and really I enjoyed that process. I didn't do it for monetization. I went in and I was just like, I'm going to get 3-4 cameras. I'm going to get 2 sound guys. I'm going to get a gopher person. I forget what they're called, something. And, I'm going to just do this thing. I have my other business, so I was able to kind of like, we have these like fun hobbies that cost us too much money, and we'd like to pretend that they're business things. And then we walk away, we say, I learned this lesson, therefore it's okay. I spent that money to do it. And so that was kind of what that project was. I was just like, I want to come in. I'll be honest, when I walk through Austin, Texas, I want people to go, hey, I know that guy. So I was like, I came up with this concept. It was called ATXAF. If you know your like kind of vernacular,
yes.
You know what we were kind of edgy with it. Yeah, kind of edgy with it, I guess. But we had a good time. We would have entrepreneurs, we would have chefs, we would have influencers, we would have musicians, and we would just sit down. We would actually do them on location at different cool little spots all around Austin. We would set up our whole thing, and we would set up for 5-6 hours and just do back-to-back podcasts. And then, I think we did it for 3 months. We put out 60-something episodes in 3 months, and I spent north of $150,000 on it. No monetization. But what I learned was that the biggest differentiator is production quality when it comes to this accessible media age that we live in. Everybody's a TV star now. So the biggest way that you can differentiate yourself is get off of a cell phone, get onto a real camera, get into some real lighting with a real background, and present yourself that way. And I learned that lesson. And so having learned that lesson, my day job has been for 20 years working with attorneys. When it came time to make my next venture, I'd had a partnership and we kind of parted ways. I'd helped grow the company and then, whatever. So I launched this, and it was just one of those things that like attorneys had been asking me. They were just like, do you do podcasts? And so that was kind of in my head. So when it was time, I grabbed out my book of business ideas. Normally has 50 workable ideas, 20 that I could take to market in a week. Yeah. And I think most entrepreneurs are like that. Yes. Maybe it's in your phone notes or voice notes or whatever. But if your brain works like most entrepreneurs, that's where you get that. How I started specifically with attorneys 20 years ago, I was in the marketing space from the time I was 18. Now, I don't have a marketing degree. I don't hide that. I have the equivalency of an associate's degree from a Bible institute that's unaccredited, which essentially means I have no education outside of my high school diploma. But at the same time, I was always the kind of person like from 14, 18, I always like knew how to just find money, get money. And I started working at this phone sales place. They were paying like twice minimum wage. But then there was this group of guys who were like selling and making $30, $40 an hour selling ads. So I got into advertising, did that. A few years down the road now, I'm still doing advertising. I'm transitioning. I'm like, listen, this is like early 2000s. I'm like, I can't sell paper anymore. I can't sell paper products. I just didn't feel good about it. I was like, the internet's not a thing. It's going to be the thing. So let's jump in on this. And my first group of people that I sold to for the internet were personal injury attorneys. They were early adopters. So I went from selling $300 ads on paper to $5,000 a month PPC packages or rotational packages within a PPC buy. And what I learned is with attorneys, you are conditioned for the most part to have a discussion. Mm-hmm. So if you say no, and I say, well, have you considered this? You will consider it. Whereas maybe other niches are a little more closed-minded because they don't have that, taught discipline of listening and being open and having a dialogue and a discourse and coming to a conclusion. And that's what I've enjoyed about working with attorneys for 20 years is I don't have to use manipulative, sleazy sales tactics. I don't even know how the spin sell is. You could name me 50 sales processes, and I'm just like, I don't know what those are. I just talk to attorneys for a living. Yeah. When they tell me no, I try to make sense to them. Sometimes they say that makes sense. Let's work together. Sometimes they're just like, leave me alone and they hang up or move on or get off the Zoom call or whatever. So that's how I got into attorneys. I feel like there's a kinship. When I was a kid watching, I don't know if you know this, there's a show called LA Law.
Yes, LA Law, of course.
Back in the 80s. Yeah. I wanted to be a lawyer back then. And I'm not a lawyer, but I always tell people I play one now on Zoom mostly. But that's how I got into working with attorneys.
Interesting. So fascinating. Yeah. And I think, PI lawyers are a unique segment of lawyers. Not all lawyers are the same, obviously. Many have different personalities. PI lawyers generally, those trial lawyers have a unique personality and are probably good in front of the camera. So that makes sense that those would be the kind of the first that you would go for. And also a lot of money in marketing. Let's be real. Their PPC clicks, what, are like $300 or something? It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, Google doesn't even talk to an attorney unless they're spending $10K a month.
Yeah, exactly.
They're just like, go find a vendor that'll spend your little $5,000.
Exactly.
The bar is very high for the legal industry as far as that kind of stuff.
The spend, it's fascinating. Yeah. So that's really interesting. So it sounds like, you got a degree from the school of the hard knocks, as I like to say, because you've kind of been through it. You've tried entrepreneurship. You've done it, which I think is a key to a lot of entrepreneurs. And it's just actually interesting because I see that in working with entrepreneurs on a daily basis. So those people actually have a lot of education that are actually most hesitant to go out on their own because they think, they got more to risk. They got a reputation now. I think it's that when you have that, when you have nothing to lose, you're more willing to take those risks. So I think that's great. You were able to do that and try it. And it sounds like you've pivoted into a lot of different areas.
Yeah. I mean, I've done social. I've had a text company, like marketing company. I've done SEO, PPC, branding. All through the years, I've tried different things, partnerships, not partnerships. And it's always just it's something I've always enjoyed. I got into marketing because I just noticed how influenced people were around me by marketing. And I was just like, I want to be in marketing because I remember the moment I decided marketing is probably my thing. I'm driving down the road and somebody's sitting next to me and I see a big McDonald's billboard and I say in my head, we're not going to get a minute past that billboard. And the person sitting next to me is going to say, McDonald's sounds good. I drive past that billboard. It's out of sight. She doesn't look up and, oh, what is that? And we drive on and 30 seconds later, she's like, man, McDonald's sounds good. And it was just something clicked in my head where I was just like, this is what I want to do for a living. Yeah. I mean, I can influence people in a positive way. Obviously, any power can be used for good or evil, right? But my thought process was I can influence people to connect with the right companies, the right products. I can be that person, that interpreter between the product and the person. And I've always loved and enjoyed doing that.
That's fascinating. What do you think it was about McDonald's? What do you think McDonald's has done to be able to have that effect on people?
Well, I mean, the Coca-Cola, the McDonald's, I mean, they just play on a different playing field. They just stay in front of you at all hours of the day and night. It's an approach that 99.9999% of businesses can't even begin to approach. It's just a pure branding. I'm putting my logo out there as much as I can so that you will crave my product as much as possible. Yeah. That's, why that is in that particular case.
Yeah, it is fascinating. Yeah, the market penetration that they have, the way they're able to get in front of people. How do you think, I mean, you're saying, you're driving past it, but how do you think social media, how do you think being online now has changed that? Do you think it's leveled the playing field? Do you think it's made it more difficult? How do you think the digital world we live in?
It's definitely leveled the playing field. We're no longer in an age of bought media. We're in an age of earned media. And if you can earn the eyeballs for whatever reason, whether it's for your business, for your hobby, for the format of a show that you've created, but if you can earn those eyeballs, that's infinitely more valuable than it used to be where you paid $10,000 and got a bunch of passive eyeballs, because now it's not just eyeballs, it's active eyeballs. That really wasn't something that you could have outside of a Super Bowl commercial when you're talking about marketing yourself. So I think that the internet and podcasting and YouTube and social media and all of these outlets have been the great equalizer. I mean, I've built a company in 1 year. I have 40 people across the world. We're going to do probably $2 million this year. We're at 1.5 ARR right now. And these are people that, like, 3 in the Philippines, 15 in Pakistan, 1 guy in South Africa, about 15 or 20 in the US. I live in Belize. Like, the internet.
Yeah.
This doesn't exist outside of what we're doing right now.
Right. Fascinating. You live in Belize. Wow. I want to, what made you move there?
My now wife, when we had been dating a few months, we came down here and she was just like, this place is awesome. I'd love to live here. And I was like, we can. I mean, I work on the internet, so I can live anywhere.
Yeah.
I just have to make sure I have good internet, that the electricity's on most of the time, and a nice place to live.
Yeah.
And we moved out to this little island. It's, there was a song from Madonna back in the 80s. Last night I dreamed of San Pedro.
Yeah.
That's where I live.
Really?
Is on that little island, and San Pedro is like a mile from my little house, but the whole island is also kind of,
that's awesome.
Many people consider it San Pedro.
I've thought about that expat life, because I also work online too. I talked to my wife about, hey, maybe we should live somewhere else for some time. Oh, that's awesome. So, so it sounds like you have built also a global company. That also seems like it's really picked up over the last 5-10 years. Have you been working with overseas talent for a long time, or is that something new?
I have.
Yeah.
I have. I've been working since like maybe 2010.
Okay.
So I guess about 15 years now. And it was interesting because, back then they're like, hire a Filipino VA, hire a Filipino VA. And I went to school with quite a few Filipinos, had friends. I was actually in a touring like singing group, and 3 of them were Filipinos. So we spent hours and hours in a van together and traveling across, the countryside or whatever. But like learning other cultures and how to respect their culture makes such a difference in having a remote company.
Yeah.
So many Americans, and even like one guy that came on my team, and he's a friend of mine, didn't quite work, but he said, well, they're working in an American company. They need to learn how we do things. And I said, that's not the way it works, my man. I said, first of all, we're all now basically global citizens.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, we've got the lines of delineation and we've got the different governments, but at the end of the day, I can jump on this computer and talk to Saad, who's over my team of 17 in Lahore, Pakistan. And I'm just like, hey, Saad, da-da-da-da-da. And he's like, oh, yeah, I got that, blah, 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 blah. And me and him meet for a couple of hours every week.
Yeah.
Again, it's just all like, and with him, same thing, like finding out what drives him and what drives his team. We had this big giveaway, and I was giving it away to support staff if we reached a certain goal with their company. And so I did this giveaway, and somebody in Pakistan won the biggest prize, which is $500, which is about entry-level position in that office. Like if you're doing lower level stuff, they can make more if they do higher end stuff. And so I was like, hey, like, what is he doing with it? Is he excited? Is he going to go on vacation? And he's like, no, we're all having a party. He's putting on a party for the whole office, and we're all having a get together to celebrate our accomplishment together. That wouldn't really happen very much in an American office.
Right.
So it's just learning. So like in the future, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to pit all you guys against each other, I'm going to say, okay, this team here, if you guys do this, you guys get this. And I know that that's their motivation button. So that's, again, that's the thing about remote, is just learning the cultures, learning what drives them, learning what offends them, what doesn't offend them, that sort of stuff. And just trying to act within that as best you can.
So true. So true. We really are living in a global world, and it's so important to have that global acumen, culture. I think I love it. I have a team. We have 3 people or 4 people in the Philippines, working for us too. And it's great. I think they're great people, very, trustworthy, very kind. And
they have a strong aversion to confrontation.
Right.
And that's what I had to learn, because I'm not a confrontational person in my mind, but I'm 6'2" Now I've lost weight. I used to be like 350. I'm like 215 now. Carry beard. I don't wear because, I will deal with professionals, but I've got a lot of tattoos on me. And so like people tend to be scared of me, even though I'm like anybody that knows me would say I'm a teddy bear, but like I just have a way of saying things. And when I'm handling business, just like do this, go here, go there, do this, do that. And I had to learn with Filipinos was more just like, hey, could you go handle that for me? Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And just learning to do it that way versus my natural way. I went through like 5 Filipino VAs before I learned this. So this wasn't like a born like phenomenal brain. We learn by making mistakes. And I lost some good people because I didn't know how to interact with them properly on the level they needed to be interacted with.
Yeah, no, so true, so true. So interesting. So I think really interesting advice. Really, anyone who has a business, thinking about if you especially have a business that you don't have to be in person somewhere, how do you grow your team globally? How do you leverage global talent? Because there's so much great talent out there if you expand your reach globally, and you'd be surprised. I definitely have been pleasantly surprised by the quality of people I've met over the years, just hiring globally. Bringing it back to just the Legal Podcast Network, I would love to talk a little bit more about why an attorney, why someone in the legal profession to even think about starting a podcast. What does it do? How can it help us? I have one. We've filmed probably 15, 18 episodes. What can it do, and what are the keys to success when it comes to starting your own podcast?
So I'm not going to give anybody keys to success because I want them to hire me. No, I'm just kidding.
You give teasers.
But, yeah, exactly. I've got 4 points you must do.
But I'll tell you 2.
And you're 3. Yeah, exactly. So I think there's 2 parts to the question. The first one was, first of all, how does podcasting benefit attorneys? Yeah. And then secondly, how would an attorney get started in an easy, low friction way? So let's talk about the first one, which is how does this benefit attorneys? Let's go back. You talked about attorneys and spending on PPC. You've been in every market in the U.S. Let's be honest, any decent sized market, they got billboards. 95% of them are to one PI attorney in that town. So like the small law firm, which is 90% of the law firm, right? There's roughly 400,000 law firms and 360,000 of them have 10 people or less in them. So that kind of gives you, that's literally a 90%. So 90 percentile are in that small law firm space. How do they position and compete against a guy who's taking that McDonald's approach of just blanket branding? And what I tell clients and what I tell in sessions and teaching is if you can't outspend somebody, outposition them. So what we do is we use podcasting as a means to an end. The podcasting isn't necessarily about the attorney's personality. It's about creating authoritative positioning for them, for their ICP, ideal client profile. So essentially what we do is they come in and let's say you're in LA, right? I've got an immigration attorney that covers the LA market. And so when she signed on, we wanted to find out like, who are your clients? Because immigration's wide, right? Divorce is wide. Like even you're business transactional, but now you've niched down from business transactional to entrepreneurial growth-minded businesses. Yeah. So we want to take that position of who their ideal client is, and we want them to own their jurisdiction for the query-based questions that would be asked. And there's 2 reasons why query-based, question-based is so important right now. One is query-based or question-based searches are higher thinking searches. For example, I type in divorce lawyer LA, vastly different than typing in what happens to a second home during a divorce. And then obviously the thing picks up that I'm in LA. The second person, the first person could want a quickie $500 divorce. They could have no assets. They could, it could be just super simple, maybe a couple of grand in and out. And listen, there are attorneys that want those clients. But if an attorney comes to me and says, I want divorces, I'm going to say, okay, what kinds of divorce? Are we talking about high asset? We're talking about custody. We're talking about, are you more focused on grandparents' rights? And that's what you want to cultivate. So then we develop the sessions, and they can do once a month, twice a month, or 4 times a month. And we develop the questions. We send them to them ahead of time. We provide a co-host. They sit down. Our co-host asks the questions. They've been teed up and they're now building. Then we take that. We have the 17 to 21 minute podcast. We build it out on YouTube, skins, B-roll, make it look really nice for YouTube, pull the audio, put the intro, outro, do everything we need to do. We put it on about 25 different networks. But then we take, and like what I learned is giving a lawyer, a small business owner, period, and saying, here is an asset for your company. It's like, be like you handing me this like beautifully written contract. I'm going to look at it and go, okay, what do you want me to do with this? And marketers have this tendency of saying, here's this beautiful asset, this podcast, this ad that I built. And the business owner's like, well, okay, what do I do with it? Right. So what we started doing is we started off 3 pieces of content for every show. We are now at 30 pieces of content for every show. That's with AI, systems, and we do a 3-tiered QA on top of systems and AI and everything else. Wow. So now we're building, like, if they do one show a month, we have 30 days of content on up to 10 outlets. We do all the posting for them, create all the posts. We do shorts, reels, audiograms, static posts, and we just trying to become a holistic solution. And what I tell attorneys is, because here's what every attorney tells me: if I can get them across the desk for me, I'm going to bring them on as a client every time. Right. 82% of people now never step foot in a lawyer's office before they make their decision. Right. 82%. You're telling me you're going to wait around for the 18% that might walk through the door?
Right.
You're not going to.
Right.
So I have to take who you are offline and reflect that properly online.
Makes sense.
That doesn't mean a generic website that's a Mr. or Miss Every Attorney site. That's a dynamic site with great content. So we also do FAQs from each podcast, 2-3 pages for their website. So, we can also build out a podcast page on their website. We're trying to create a dynamic environment for their marketing ecosystem that is very low impact for them. 30 minutes. And you got a month's worth of content. Give me 2 hours a month and I can have you a show every week, 3 posts a day, and 2 to 3 pages of content on your site every week. We're just trying to have very low friction, very simple, very easy, play to the strengths of attorneys, which is answering questions and talking.
Right.
What I say is we're harnessing your innate ability for your own benefit, which again is just marketing speak for you can talk. Let's get a camera out and record it.
That's one thing most lawyers can do is talk. That's one thing we're trained to do. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, this is great. Yeah, it sounds really beneficial for a lot of lawyers out there looking to start a podcast or get into podcasting, having someone who can guide you through that whole process. That sounds fantastic. So we're kind of reaching the end of the episode, but I'd love to have one last comment or insight, one takeaway you would want to give to listeners about the importance of marketing or podcasts, anything that you're doing right now, anything you'd like to leave listeners with.
Absolutely. I think all marketing is long play now. Everybody used to think, I'm going to buy a month's worth of ads in the local newspaper, or I'm going to buy a quarter page in the yellow pages. And I know I'm going way back, and there's maybe some Z's and alphas listen to this. I don't know why they would, but hey, I don't know who your audience is.
Exactly.
You go on yellow pages. What is that? But, that's how attorneys used to think. And so to them, it was just like, I'll do it, and then I'll get something, and then I'll do it, and then I'll get something. Whereas modern media is earning trust. So the more that there are, like right now, this sort of like authority building approach isn't something that like every attorney is doing. And like we can't like own this process, but we do give exclusivity so that we're not working with competing attorneys. And so understand that whatever you do, whether it's your website, we're in a big time of change. We could have talked about that, or it's media, or it's a YouTube, or paid ads, or whatever it is. Understand that it will take time for 2 reasons. The first reason is because people they rarely just watch one video and go, that's it, I'm picking them. Like they watch it and they kind of lurk, right? Like, have you ever watched your social media stats and seen how many lurkers you have? Yeah. I'll look at a stat and I'll look at a post and it'll be like 3 likes, 400 click-throughs. And I'm like, couldn't like 10% of you just click the like if you wanted, Yeah. But the good thing is the algorithms read that now, but it takes time. You have to build those assets. You have to build that consistency. Don't go do 4 podcasts and be like, I didn't get any business. I just forget this. Don't go, make 4 informational YouTube videos and then be like, I didn't get anything. I forget it. These things take time. And so that would be my biggest encouragement is just understand that it takes time. The lucky thing is it doesn't always take as much time as you're afraid as it might. So, I'm not saying you got to invest for 5 years. With our program, we tell our clients the first 4 months, your friends, family, maybe even a few warm leads are going to come trickling in and say, hey, I saw your stuff. This is great. They'll start interacting with it, which will then start bumping it in by the second cycle of 5, 6, 7, 8. Now you'll start getting calls and interaction from people who didn't already know who you were before they came upon this content. So again, it just takes time.
Yeah, it's great insight. And it's so true. You definitely have to be willing to play the long game, I think, with podcasting and a lot of social media. It's not overnight. People who are successful, can take a year or a couple of years, to really see significant payoffs. But I think the algorithms, the companies do reward people who are persistent and continue to do it. So just something to keep in mind as you kind of think about embarking on this journey. You have to be willing to play that long game because you're really just not going to see anything on the short side if you just try to do it for a couple of months. So Dennis, it's been fantastic. I really appreciate all the insight you've shared. I think this has been really valuable for anyone looking to understand more about marketing. Where do people find you in case they're looking to get in touch?
Simplest, probably LinkedIn. and I try to share some pretty meaty stuff, some decent stuff there, and videos, just because you got to give the algorithm what it wants.
Yeah.
But, I've got a piece of content that I just finished that is about essentially clarity on the M dashes and having to do with the way that the new LLM models index content. And so everyone's, I take my M dashes out, and it's like, that's how they index. That's like bragging in 2005 that you removed your meta tags and your keywords.
Right.
So I mean, sure, like as a human, I might not see M dashes now. So, okay. But in the long run, you're basically building content for yourself in the moment when you don't follow the rules.
Right. Interesting. Good insight. Good stuff. Maybe for another episode, or if you guys want to learn more, reach out, because I think there's definitely something to learn there. So with that said, we're going to wrap up today. I really appreciate everyone for listening. We're going to be including the links to get in touch with Dennis in the show notes, and also some links to other resources that we might have mentioned here today. And again, thank you for listening to Letters Intent. I am Pankaj Raval with Carbon Law Group, the law firm for deal makers and risk takers. We are helping all types of business owners from $1 to $50 million in all types of transactions, and also trademark issues that you might face. So please reach out if you have any questions, or if we can be of help in any way. Thank you again for your time and listening. We really appreciate it. Until next time.